Welcome to Moving Forward, conversations on culture, identity, healing, and hope. I'm your host, Linda Anderson, and I created this podcast as a space for real, heartfelt conversations with people who are reflecting, evolving, and boldly stepping into what's next. This podcast was born out of my own journey through seasons of loss, transition, and transformation, and my belief that healing happens when we come together to share our stories. My hope is that these conversations will inspire you to pause, reflect, and find courage as you move forward in your own life. Today's conversation is one that I've been especially excited to share because it centers on youth-led innovation, environmental justice, and collective hope. I'm joined by 4 extraordinary high school students, Pooja, Sai, Harshitha, and Lisa. They're members of a youth-powered organization called Eco-Innovate, where sustainability, technology, and the arts intersect to revitalize both community and environment. Through their Birdboxers Project, they've implemented over 15 autonomously monitoring bird boxes across California, collecting more than 40,000 real climate and wildlife data points to support conversation and research. Through Brushstrokes for the Bay, they've also brought environmental awareness to life through powerful public murals created by youth artists. Together, they've reached more than 37,000 students and community members, taught over 60 hours of self-designed curriculum, built a major nonprofit partnerships, and raised 5 figures in community support. But today isn't just about the numbers. It's about who they are becoming as leaders, as change makers, and as young people shaping a future rooted in responsibility, creativity, and hope. So I want to thank all 4 of you for being here and taking the time out of your busy schedule to answer and have a conversation together. Thank you for being here. We're going to start with Pooja. What moment made you realize Eco Innovate needed to exist?
Yeah, this is a really great question. And I think Eco Innovate specifically kind of came without warning. It was born out of something that was a lot more contained, in my opinion. In my sophomore year, I actually just assumed like a leadership role for our local Girls in STEM club. But we had an opportunity that came up from a local environmental official, and they were calling for high schoolers to implement some sort of motion tracking technology in bird boxes for our city's Central Park. And I think once we had that one connection, we kind of let our own vision take over. And then, as you mentioned, we created this entire autonomously monitoring system where we were tracking visual data more than just binary motion tracking. And I think I definitely saw a chance for us to sort of revitalize a whole industry there. And that's kind of why we decided to form our own nonprofit outside of the club and then grow in that way. So I think that was definitely the spark that willed like Eco Innovate into existence. And then in addition, our kind of like narrative was also just built on, I guess, just being in the Bay Area, being surrounded by technology. I don't think youth hear enough about how it can be used to help our environment rather than hurt it or detriment it. So we really wanted to make that like a bigger part of the picture with our organization.
Thank you so much for that and major information. And I just want to stress before I go on to the next question for Lisa is, again, I want the listeners to understand this is youth and give them the opportunity, and you'll hear in the conversation, but what they're able to do. So Lisa, let me ask you, what drew you personally into this work?
Yeah, so there were 2 factors that drew me into this work. I've always had this core question in the back of my mind of like, how can I help people and how can I like help them care about these important subjects? And early on, I realized that I love art and communication.
Mhm.
And so in middle school and even early high school, I started to get more involved in different publicity jobs and also exploring using art to publicize, whether it be for an event or a cause. And at the same time, ever since childhood, I've just always been passionate about environmental advocacy. So these two interests kind of like naturally pulled me towards the project of the service branch that I worked on under Girls in STEM, as Pooja talked about, and which eventually did help spark Birdboxers and Eco Innovate. And it was also under that where some of the same teammates that are still here with us in Eco with me encouraged, like Pooja and Harshitha, really encouraged me to explore publicity and marketing so that we can publicize our cause. And Eco Innovate became the place where that I could combine my love for the environment with my interest in outreach and using creativity and communication to raise awareness. And that blend is what drew me in and what's kept me here.
Mm. And I really want listeners to understand, and hopefully they've got the art. Art can go in so many different avenues. So thank you for sharing that. Sai, what problem did you personally want to solve when you began the bird boxes?
Well, I joined Eco Innovate a lot later than most of the other people on this call and on the team. When I joined, they had already created a couple systems that they were using to keep the box together. And one of those systems was a Velcro system designed to attach the camera to the inside of the bird box. Um, and on paper, this Velcro system should have worked without issue, but in practice, the Velcro strips wouldn't adhere to the wood properly and it would come off after a little while, so it wasn't a viable option for long-term installments of bird boxes. So, before even fully committing to eco, I saw this issue and I wanted to help in any way that I could. So I ended up designing a new system that is now called the rubber band system. And in the system, it uses four pins that are drilled into the inside of the bird box, and then two rubber bands that go horizontally and vertically to kind of make a suspension system for the pie case so that you can easily remove the box from the inside while also having a system that doesn't have a lot of moving parts, so it won't break over time and is um, reliable enough that we can leave it alone for longer periods of time without having to check in on it a bunch of times. So, and I think my entire goal with that is just to embody like our main goals in our original mission for the Birdboxers project, because what we wanted was to reduce the number of maintenance checks that we needed on bird boxes. So to have a system that holds the camera in place that doesn't require continuous monitoring and maintenance is also essential to like our original mission.
I so appreciate you sharing that because when you all came to Olivera for the first time, where I was the principal, you were using the Velcro. And I remember not happy with what was happening. So thank you for that expertise that you brought to the table for everybody. Harshitha, I want to ask you, why was it important that this work didn't stop at data, but included murals?
Yeah, so when Brushstrokes for the Bay or Eco Innovates recently established sister organization, when it was first a spark of an idea, it was mostly because of the passion within our own officer team for art and creative work. So while we knew that our boxes would give us insight into how ecological systems worked and how humans impacted them, we realized that we weren't reaching all of our community with just this one project. So we had gotten in contact with a lot of schools and organizations throughout the Bay, but we realized that we were still missing something, and that something turned out to be something that the whole community could view and interact with and interpret, and realized that the murals were the best way to do so. So we learned that data can inform people, but will not emotionally engage with them or make them connected personally to the issue. And as a young elementary student, watching teen groups paint murals around my school about kindness or the ocean or spreading positivity, I've personally always wanted to leave a mark like that. And a lot of our team was able to relate with me about this as well. So we launched Brushstrokes for the Bay in the summer of 2025, starting with a goal of finishing a couple murals over the summer. But now we've collaborated with many other organizations like ours to host community murals and have about 10 projects in the working right now. So murals have given access to that sense of community, highlighted by the hundreds of people we talk to at every event, and they capture the eyes of every child and every adult walking by, only solidifying our place in the community. And this was something we only get from an artistic talent and really pushed us towards starting a art-driven sister organization, Brushstrokes for the Bay.
And the thing about art and murals and anybody walking by any mural, and now yours, there's a story there. So it grabs their attention and they're able to either write a poem about it or tell a story about it. So you're encouraging other academics too. So again, I'm a very big advocate of creativity. So thank you for that. So Sai, we're going to go into like the impact of all this. And so Sai, my question to you is how does it feel knowing scientists may one day use your data?
I think in the context of the current political climate and a lot of real world events that are happening now, credibility and transparency are one of our highest priorities when it comes to data collection and like publicizing our research. So to know that there is a like there is a possibility for scientists to use whatever data we collect now, it really drives us to achieve like the best quality of information that we can get. And it also motivates us to try harder in every aspect of what we do, whether it be in our communities, in our technologies, in our arts, and our curriculums, and everything that we do. We truly want to make sure that in the future, people can look back at our work and know that we did our best and we are like we are reliable, and that especially as youth, we can also be trustworthy sources, and our age doesn't um, devalue our um, our gift to the community.
That was, thank you for that response because again, listeners, if we let go, adults, and let the youth and their voice, what they are able to do is, it really is mind-boggling to me. And data, yes, you're right, it's critical. So thank you for that. Pooja, I have a couple questions for you. When did the responsibility of this work really hit you? Let's go with that one first.
Yeah, I think on that note of like youth-led teaching, I think if I had to pick a moment where I really felt that responsibility, it would probably be Eco-Innovate's first community workshop. It was our winter workshop in early 2025. Um, After spending like weeks fighting for, I guess, signups and arranging a collaboration with our local nature preserve, it was finally time for us to host the 30 kids on that actual workshop day. And I remember vividly staying up till like 1 or 2 a.m. the night before because I guess like all leaders, you would only feel that burden of responsibility if something went wrong. So I had to make sure that that wouldn't happen. So of course, when I did walk in, and then our Raspberry Pi microprocessors, they're the little computers that actually like take photos in our bird boxes. When those didn't work, when they didn't connect to the Wi-Fi, I think I definitely felt like almost that burden of that leadership. But of course, as we're always able to adapt, we were able to find a really easy fix in which the kids could reenact or simulate coding on the microprocessors without actually having to access them. So I think that really embodies our spirit of being able to engineer new solutions, even in the face of like unexpected adversity. So yeah, in other words, I guess when Eco Innovate stopped being like this garage endeavor, but it actually became this like real world thing that was very unpredictable and impactful for the next generation. I think that's when it really felt responsible, and we all had to be held accountable for what we were doing with this organization.
So, listeners, we're listening to a high school student and business, whoever's listening right now, business people, listen to what this high school student just said. I mean, she is understanding what needs to be done to lead a project, and how awesome that they took it on. And I mean, they met with me a couple times and other administrators, but it's more of their voice was totally out there. And I can't thank you enough for sharing that. I don't know if, let me ask this question, but I think you might have answered it. But what does youth-led teaching make possible that adults, there's the part of it that I'm not sure you answered, that adults sometimes can't?
Yeah, that's a really good like extension to that question. And I think it's really this shared sense of youth responsibility that we have with the kids we teach.
Mm,
Where in the face of issues like climate change, where it's this huge burden for the entire next generation, I think the fact that we are able to engage with youth is so
mhm,
much more impactful than maybe that external adult voice. Because in a way, like we're sharing that burden with these kids and they're able to relate to us. And again, with that relatability, there's a lot of joy that comes out of it as well. I know, like, I mentioned the winter camp where we taught middle schoolers. We've also worked with elementary schoolers, people of all ages. And I think in that, we're able to have like this bond, obviously, because we're all younger. So I
mhm.
know that our workshops have been places of not only like learning and hands-on like building, but also just like jokes and icebreakers and having fun with each other, which I think is so important to actually keep kids motivated to continue like growing their knowledge.
Yeah. So, Harshitha, Pooja was talking about the future and so on and the climate right now. But Harshitha, do you believe that art can heal climate anxiety?
Yeah, I most definitely think art can heal climate anxiety. So, both at a personal level, but even more powerfully at the level of a community. So, anxiety, especially as about issues as big as climate change, can often come from feeling not connected in a way and
Mm,
feeling helpless from the solutions. And so, art actually does the opposite. So, when, for example, when you look at a mural, it gives you something real and hopeful to hold on to.
mhm,
And you're not just looking at the issue that's conveyed through the mural, but you're also able to visually see hope and resilience, possibility, hope, and care. So I've seen this myself at many of our events that we've hosted and participated in, like Pooja with the winter workshop, and how people find hope in the messages of a mural, even though the challenge seems so widespread and beyond a solution that would take a lifetime. So at every mural event, people of all ages come together. So these are kids painting fish for the first time, teens talking about the bay's wildlife, adults sharing their own environmental stories. And those moments are the ones that replace fear with participation. So instead of people feeling overwhelmed by data or distant global issues, people get to create something meaningful with their own hands. And murals, and in more generally art, they serve as a reminder that the environment should not just be a constant worry, and it's also something that we can protect together. And community art makes people feel like they belong, and this sense of belonging can heal climate anxiety one step at a time.
mhm. I'm going to pull out the word sense of belonging because it does. And if you even just stand around a mural or an art project, you'll hear the voices, the different voices. And if it's around climate anxiety, imagine the conversations that can happen. So, Lisa, the emotional stability of all this, what keeps you hopeful when the future feels uncertain?
Yeah, I feel like I speak for all of us when I say that hope comes from the pattern that I've seen over and over again, where things find a way to work out. And even if the outcome isn't what we originally imagined, it will work out in its own way. And especially in Eco Innovate, we've always managed to navigate challenges by working together. And whether it was trying to expand our reach or questioning the scope of our projects, our team has always found amazing solutions, and repeatedly overcoming obstacles reminds us that progress is possible and despite seemingly disadvantaged situations. I remember that actually a constant reoccurring obstacle that we've experienced and quite frankly still encounter especially for our marketing team, is with signups and participation for workshops, because we do need support, whether it be with participation or for monetary support for us to continue with our advocacy. But we've learned to solve these issues by persevering. We've learned how to really get out there, go to like places so that we can tell everybody about these honestly amazing experiences that we have to offer. And we've also found amazing communities and also advisors along the way to help us reach a broader audience so we can take our advocacy to the next level. So now some of these like quote obstacles that we went through at the time are now memories that our team can honestly look back to and have a laugh about, and of course also serve as an experiences that we can learn from so that we can prevent these issues from arising in the future. And I think that's really beautiful, like knowing that even when it feels uncertain, we can always adapt, learn, and keep moving forward.
I can only hope that I can follow your journeys because to hear all of you right now, I mean, so much life ahead, and you use the word perseverance and communication. I'm going to go back to perseverance. So you definitely persevered. I remember when you first started this, and you ran into obstacles, but you were together and you solved them and you kept moving forward. And now look what you have. So I hope the listeners hear that, and anybody in business, and imagine, any of the companies or even entrepreneurs now and how they persevere. So here's these young adults, young teenagers, not young, but they're about to graduate, some from high school and go on to college or wherever, and what they've learned already. Wow. So thank you for that. Pooja, so this five-figure funding, what did it feel like when adults invested financially in your vision?
Yeah, definitely like raw, genuine recognition. I know that our families and my family personally has poured so many like finances, birthday gifts, and donations just towards like getting our mission off the floor. So when there was actually like adults that were genuinely interested in our project, it was insane. It began to feel like people that were beyond our social circles actually cared about us.
Right.
I remember there was one distant donor, like a friend of a friend, that poured a lot of finances to our initiative, and I remember she told like my mom and I that like, wow, what you guys are doing, this combination of sustainability and technology, like trust me, it's really rare. Like I've been in the industry and this will take off. So I think in that sense, a lot of these donations that we've gotten and this community foundation has served to not only like perpetuate our initiative through like material funds, but also like our hope as well and our motivation to keep moving forward, because we know that there are outside people, investors per se, that care about what we're doing and actually want to see it through. And then in addition to that, like that grassroots support, we've also gotten a few grants from outside organizations. Tri-City Ecology, I think, was our first major one. And I still remember like me and Harshitha just being on this Zoom call and presenting our pitch deck for what must have been less than like 10 minutes. But a few days later, we literally received like $1,000 in our bank account. So I think it was incredible recognition that once we started to grow, more and more adults started believing in our vision and like actually recognizing the youth voice, especially how we were able to consciously make a difference despite our low funding initially.
I think there's so many great points of what you're doing, but you didn't give up. And that's so critical to make things like this keep moving forward. You don't stop. You're not stopping. You've run into little obstacles here and there, and financially is one, but you've just kept going and getting the word out there, and people are believing in what you're doing, and we need to. So that being said, Sai, have you ever been underestimated because of age or identity?
I have, um, being youth in a space like this, and we're in a space of technology and engineering, especially, um, since I personally work a lot with power tools and stuff to for eco, and it was especially hard to get recognition that even kids like me are able to be trusted and can have the brain power to figure out how to use like more complicated tools. And I think one of the main things that I had different that other people might not have had was I had access to power tools to practice myself. I was able to see my dad um, engineering all of this stuff at home. He would take on huge projects and he would try and teach me everything he was doing so that I could do the same thing for myself and I didn't have to rely on other people to do it for me. And I think having that kind of motivation from my dad really did boost my confidence to step into like new spaces and new circles, especially for engineering, since I didn't have any engineering background before joining Eco. It all just kind of flowed naturally into that direction. And I think because it was so genuine and it was a slow process and um, because of that, it felt so true and it doesn't feel like that um, forced way that a lot of youth, especially in the Bay Area, will get into engineering because a lot of kids will go into engineering because their parents went into engineering. Um, but I feel especially lucky that I was able to be introduced to it in this way, in a way that I was able to practice creativity rather than rigid ideas and like following a blueprint. I was able to create my own systems and try out new tools, try out new solutions to problems. And for that, I think I am truly lucky.
And you talked about your dad and how you watched your dad, and I'm a big advocate, and listeners that know me, of planting seeds and then growing. Your dad planted a seed and you watched. So, to listeners, the youth are watching. They take it in, and there might be a moment in their life where they're going to let it grow. And obviously, you had it grow, and you continue to do that. So, thank you, Harshita. What's the most powerful reaction someone has had to your art? And it's a two-part question, so I'll ask that one first, and then I'll ask the next one.
Yeah, so one of our most powerful reactions that came from someone who viewed one of our pieces was they looked at it and they interpreted it in a different way that none of us on the team had originally imagined.
Oh,
So,
wow.
as the creators, we had a specific and different environmental message in mind, but this person saw something deeply personal in it, and this connected their own past experiences with nature and their community. So, after this, they ended up sharing stories about their environmental story and what they had observed growing up and how they were making changes in the world today. So their interpretation expanded our own understanding of what we had created. So their story captured the attention of all the volunteers that were standing nearby. And that's when we realized that simply interpreting a mural became a moment of community.
Mm.
And that specific moment really showed us how powerful a piece of art can be and reminded us that murals just don't convey the message we paint, but they also open the space for people to bring their own stories and emotions into interpreting the work. So, seeing someone connect so personally to something we created brought our volunteers together in a new way too, because it made us realize the impact of our art continues long after the paint dries. And it can spark reflection, conversation, and a sense of shared understanding that we could have never predicted.
I think of many different artists, and they have like you're saying, they have an idea in their mind, but you use the word story, and that's another big thing of mine. Everybody has a different story. So what you're thinking maybe something like you said that this other person saw something different because of their story. However, what you're doing is your creativity is definitely opening up everyone's different story. So thank you for that. And the other question I have though is your audience is exploding. So how did your sense of responsibility change once your audience exploded?
Yeah. So when our audience started to grow, so our sense of responsibility shifted completely.
Mm.
So previously, our work mostly reached a smaller circle. So these were some adults, a few partners, and the occasional groups who stopped by our table at events. But now we had an entire community following our progress and our monthly updates from our newsletter who now celebrated our milestones and genuinely cared about what we were building and the progress we were making. Now we had people that weren't just observing from a distance and interacting with us just one time, but they were rooting for us, asking questions, sharing our posts, and showing up in every way that they could. And this created a new sense of responsibility on our side. So we felt the need to live up to the hope and visions that people placed in us and felt a stronger commitment to go bigger, take on more ambitious projects, and stay consistent in the impact we were making. It pushed us to put ourselves out there even more than we had done before and made us realize how much our work truly mattered to others. And that awareness has shaped everything from the way we plan projects to the way we show up in our community today.
And your communication skills, all of you, are extremely strong. And you're great at having conversations and multiple perspectives. Because I know you've met with many people who had different perspectives, and you take it in and maybe tweak or, change a little way of what you're doing. But your communication is so strong. Lisa, I have a two-part question for you. How has Eco Innovate changed how you see your own power? We'll start with that first.
I feel like most of us have known about all sorts of environmental issues since we were often like extremely young, but more often than that, not the reaction to hearing about these issues is more like, oh, that's really unfortunate, but like what impact can I really have in solving this problem? I'm only so young, or I'm only so experienced, or I don't have the resources. Like these are all like honestly pretty valid concerns to have as a kid learning about environmental issues. But for me, being part of Eco Innovate has completely flipped that perspective of mine. And seeing what our team has achieved as high schoolers, hosting so many workshops, tabling at events, not only like teaching younger students, but also but also like educating adults about these environmental issues. We're not just spreading awareness anymore, but we're also presenting a viable solution on how to approach these problems and how to combat them using technology to address environmental problems. And it's shown me that age or like status doesn't define the power that you have in making a change, and rather it's ambition that and belief in yourself that do define your power. So
Mhm.
when you trust that you can make a difference, you start acting like somebody who can, and the results follow. And I truly wish that more youths can be inspired by Eco Innovate's example and be motivated to also believe in their own power.
Mhm. And I remember when you presented to the school board, and how powerful that was in front of five, six adults, and your words really resonated to them. Lisa, also, but what has this work healed in you personally?
I feel like, honestly, I used to be a bit more, I used to like to call myself realistic, but in actuality, it was more just like pessimism. I would set smaller goals for myself because in the name of like being realistic, but being part of Eco Innovate has helped me realize that you can achieve those like crazy goals that you've been thinking about, like us reaching five figures in funding, reaching like tens of thousands of people in terms of reach. Like those are all goals that I never would have thought that I would have been part of, like as a team to be able to achieve. And I think that's what's really changed about my perspective about my own power.
That's great. And continue feeling that way because there's so much more ahead of you. I believe that. So, Sai, where do you hope this work leads you in 10 years?
Well, for one thing, I learned a lot about myself through eco, and that was that in everything I do, I want to leave the world a better place than when I first found it. And so I think even in the next 10 years, whatever I decide to do, I will continue to have that mindset, and I think I will continue to do this work in the climate literacy and climate advocacy space, even alongside whatever career I decide to go down. I truly think that people like Lisa said, they don't think that they have enough power to make any change on an individual scale, but I think all change has to begin at an individual scale before it can ever go to something that can make a real world impact. And I think if everyone can just try a little bit to bring some of that change to the world, then the world will be a lot better place.
If everyone can just bring a little bit. I hope listeners heard that. That's all you have to do, and that is totally what you're all doing. Harshitha, what do you hope your murals leave behind?
So, personally, I hope our murals leave behind the same spark they do when someone sees them for the first time, and that causes them to think back to their own life. So, the kind of spark that makes people reflect about their own life and their relationship with the environment. So, I want people to see the mural and not just observe what's on the canvas, but also understand the message of the art piece and why it's so important that it deserves its own spotlight. I hope that people will always use our murals as conversation starters for how they can make a change in their community. And no matter how old or how young, no matter how experienced or not, I want people to feel like they have the power to make change. While it might require a community of voices sometimes, they will get that community by putting themselves out there and interacting with others that have similar desires. There was something similar that sparked our officer team to do more and more of these and continue the efforts of our organizations for years to come. And I hope that one day our murals can also do the same to other groups of people who feel lost about the way they can about what they can do to play a part in protecting our Earth. In a time when climate issues feel overwhelming, a mural can leave behind a feeling of hope instead of fear. And I hope for our murals to become a symbol of our community and the collective efforts we've pitched in to protect our environment.
And as someone that's not an artist myself, I still want to, and I think you said it too, is I love looking at murals because it allows my mind to really kind of go different places, even though I artistically cannot draw very well or anything like that, but my mind can definitely vision, and that is what your murals are doing. And so thank you for that. Pooja, here's the last question. If Eco Innovate were remembered 20 years from now, what?
Well, I think when we say remember, we're often referencing this like yearning, distant, like reminiscent tone. And so for
Mm.
that reason, I don't think that Eco-Innovate would be remembered at all. I think instead it would be observed and like appreciated and recognized in the present. I think our mission, like itself intrinsically, has to persist because if we're working towards sustainable development of technology or art, our organization needs to be able to survive to see that through. So we need to be able to persist in order to create a network of bird boxes across the state and a coalition of youth artists that are working to create murals across the Bay Area. So I think that our project will definitely like live on through leadership being passed on and new chapters forming. But I think I speak for all of us when I say that our ambitions definitely define us at Eco Innovate. And so for that reason, I think we're really going to try to keep perpetuating our mission until we're really able to reach the broadest basis that we can. And our organization is sort of like a household name for youth-led climate initiatives that blend art, creativity, and even technology.
So, as we close this conversation, which I really don't want to, but because I just get inspired and empowered every single time that I meet with this group. And I haven't in a while because I did retire in June, but I'm so filled with gratitude over these teenagers, these high school students, and I am in so much hope. I have so much hope and awe. My thing though is we need to let teens do and let go and let them imagine, look what they've done when you give them the power to do it. I'm just, like I said, I could talk to you for a very long time. My wonder though, right now, because I want the listeners to hear is, and I want to make sure, and I will put this in the show notes that when it's released, but it's ecoinnovates.com, correct? That's your website?
We do not have a .com domain. It should be tinyurl.com/ecoinnovate
Okay.
web website or site. Um, yes, tinyurl.com/eco-innovate website.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll get the reason I'm pushing this is because the donation part. I really feel, I mean, the more donations, and I'm sure listeners that are out there listening to this will want to donate because it's such a great thing that you're doing. So Pooja, Sai, and Harshitha and Lisa, so what you're building together reminds us that environmental healing doesn't begin in boardrooms. It begins in classrooms, neighborhoods, code, canvas, and please listeners hear this, courageous young voices. Your work tells us that innovation has no age requirement, that identity fuels purpose, and that hope is something we actively create together. To our listeners, may this conversation remind you that the future isn't something we wait for. It's something we build, teach, paint, code, and believe into being. And that is so what these young people have done. Thank you for joining us on Moving Forward, conversations on culture, identity, healing, and hope. And until next time, keep moving forward.